sickness, disease, plague and pox, suffering and the slow, living rot. Such wondrous gifts does Nurgle seek to bestow upon the unworthy human cattle of the Imperium. We are merely the vectors by which his virulent beneficence may spread to the undeserving masses.
Throughout the history of human existence, mankind has struggled to advance due to harrying disease and sickness. The toll of death spares neither poor nor powerful men should they hear its chime. The perseverance of the species through untold miseries inflicted, a testament to its tenacity. For today, we shall elucidate the avatar of entropy, content with spreading new life at the cost of suffering. A primordial being who delights in its parody as a paternal figure for the deranged masses. The Lord of Decay, Disease, and Pestilence, Nurgle. As part of the pantheon of chaos tethered to humanity's collective psyche, the entity known as the Great Corruptor is intertwined with quite possibly the greatest fear of mankind, its own mortality. Coalesced from the raw dread of morbidity, none among the ruinous pantheon is more active in its meddling of mortal affairs. Its attentions fixed on the humblest of labor serfs to the mightiest of space marines, emblematic of another of its titles, the Lord of All. Preying on the fear of death by potential thralls, their desperation to cling to the precipice of life, a tasty morsel to the Lord of Flies, as it listens to the prayers of mothers and fathers who cry pleas for salvation by the bedsides of sickly children. Its power waxing and waning with the rise and fall of pandemics, plagues and virus outbreaks. With each medical revolution made by humanity, its influence has ebbed, only to redouble into new horrors unleashed upon its populace. Capable of surpassing the might of its rivals at the height of its power, not even the Blood God can match its potential, as the spoils of its patient cultivation of disease are ripe for the harvest. The attribution of the Lord of Death, not entirely accurate due to the Plague Father's tendency to spawn horrific new life from the mulch of its victims. Even the God Emperor of mankind staves off eternal rest at the cost of millions of subjects of his own carrion empire. For while a king may employ and train an honor guard to save him from the assassin's blade, curry favor with his subjects to prevent usurpation and plots, or take to piety to stave off the influence of excess, none can escape the ravages of time and inevitable decay. Each act of renewal, whether the sacrifice of one life to sustain another, a sundered game of commerce, redirecting to ventures new, or valorous sacrifice made to prevent the deaths of many, each act emboldens the Plague Lord to expand its domains and influence. Never standing idle as it continues to stir its cauldron of fell concoctions. Despite its rotund demeanor, it would be unwise to believe that Nurgle is by any stretch of the imagination a lazy being. Its enthusiasm infectious in both applications of the term. Within its manse, deep within the Garden of Nurgle, this entity brews concoctions to test the resourcefulness of those who shall act as its vectors. The endless experimentations of the Lord of Flies, the envy of all who study the arts of biological meddling, every vaccine and cure opening avenues to create more deadly and virulent strains, there is no end to the Grandfather's conscientiousness. Resistance to disease, a self-defeating means to bolster each contagion's potency. Seen by many as a corrupting influence in the basest sense, it would be more accurate to perceive Nurgle as the embodiment of rebirth. The Master of Certitude, having witnessed the rise and fall of every empire of mortals, gleefully anticipating the newest toils to be conducted by the doomed masses. A shepherd of destiny by those who fall victim to its machinations, such is its twisted outlook on existence that it bequeaths so-called blessings unto its servants, the coin of flesh spent in exchange for deliverance from pain. Inhabiting many forms which each of the Xenos species perceive alongside its imperial counterpart, all regardless see this genderless entity with masculine traits, and on shorthand simply regard it as he, father, or the grandfather. Bloated and immense in scale, this swollen abomination, bulging with putrescence, is pocked with sores, buboes, and oozing open wounds. Its necrotic, discolored flesh seemingly of no concern to the entity, as its organs spill through ruptured skin. Surrounded by cavorting mischievous minions, known as Nurglings, each bursts from pustules which form all over its body, often feasting on the discharges released by this catastrophic blight. Perversely caring for those it afflicts with its poxes, this foul catastrophe of life offers succor only to the most depraved souls consigned to a hopeless existence, enticing them with the prospect of an assured victory and an end to suffering. Relieved of the burden of misery and despair, the thralls of Nurgle ignore the sores and pustules which form on their skin, as worms and maggots fester within bleeding entrails and infected gouges. Embracing the inevitable spread of decay as a sign of their master's eternal glory, despite their rancid forms, no pain can be felt, and thus inspires loyalty to the emancipator of their suffering. Seeing the world with fresh eyes, its subjects, regardless of eventually understanding that the cause of their initial pain was bestowed by their new overlord, see themselves as special. The blind fools forfeiting their souls to the being who administered the cure to the disease which itself inflicted. Baffling its kindred of the Blood God and Prince of Pleasure, though on occasions the legions of Khorne and Slaanesh aid Nurgle's campaigns for mutual gain, the Changer of Ways, regardless, refuses to indulge its jolly brother's quirks. The schemes of siege among the rare actions which can stifle the Plaguefather's mirth. Within its rotten heart, if such a thing exists, Nurgle hopes that with its ambition to enact the great corruption achieved, his rival conspirator shall lay in rest eternal. To give praise to such an inherently corrosive and rotten being would seem to be a difficult bargain to accept. Yet of all the Plaguefather's enticements, deliverance from pain is forefront of its boons. Offering assimilation into the entropy which it propagates, those under its protection feel not the agony of their bowels hanging from their guts, nor the endless erosion and regrowth of the flesh of their forms. Not a single being immune to the inevitable demise of their existence. Within all mortals resides a chance to surrender to the Lord of Flies. Yet to believe its subjects, living in a state of undeath, to have escaped mortality, is an irony clear to behold. Many of its subjects pledging offerings and fealty without their knowledge of the being's existence. Many has been the stubbornness of lepers to reside far from their able-bodied kin, as their continued suffering slowly feeds Grandfather Nurgle. Infecting mortals with terrible diseases merely for its sick amusement, those most deranged by its ethos look with wonder upon the suffering of those afflicted as among the most debased manifestations of its influence. Each soul of the deaths claimed by pox or disease, spirited to the land of the Plague Lord, the Church of the Fly Lord, proclaim that those who serve as its champions shall not become living fertilizer for his garden, but tenders to its majesty. The garden hungry for new souls to act as compost for the Plague Lord's domains. Many are the crestfallen of life's endless suffering, who willingly submit to serving as heralds of Nurgle's will. Seen as the only member of the ruinous powers who genuinely cares for its subjects, even in comparison to the distant gaze of the God Emperor, the uncaring contempt of the Blood God, unknowing intent of the Changer of Ways, or two-faced fickleness of She Who Thirsts, Nurgle is the most honest of all deities. Offering hopelessness as currency to those downtrodden by myriad regimes. With acceptance that decay is inevitable, the fight to preserve mortal concerns seems paltry to many who succumb to the mantra of entropy. Seeking to forestall their decay by allying to its cause. In a twisted way, those that embolden its relentless consumption enable a measure of order to be derived from the chaos. Incorporating both cyclical natures of its being into unified purpose, Nurgle, unlike its contemporaries, whose attributions often work against themselves, has crafted a gospel which is self-sustaining. Its favor renewed, not with ever-heightening acts made in praise to its being, but mere acceptance of the nature of existence and continued renewal of life through death. Yet should one scrutinize the doctrine of Nurgle, one can see its folly by its deeds. A child sobbing last moments, once ravaged by disease, or the festering of a wound received defending the innocent, often time enough to cause those who witness its gifts to curse the Plaguefather's name and thus deny its influence. Its ultimate goal to plunge the universe into the terminus of its lifespan. The Lord of Flies seeks to erode the foundations of life itself, and use their broken matter to recreate existence in its own image. Known by its subjects as the Great Corruption, those held in sway by the Grandfather shall stand by its side as life begins anew, its inexorable and inevitable victory assured due to its nature as the Lord of Decay and Rebirth. Harnessing the mortal feel of death using psychic manipulations, though the majority of its servants do not pledge their service willingly, they shall nonetheless be unflinching in their fealty, once corrupted. The tenuous promise of the escape of death, enough for many to accept eternal damnation. So long as such thralls spread the contagions of Nurgle, they shall be spared the bite of its agonizing spread. Often housing new life within the sinews and muscles of their own bodies, the walking corpses of the Plague God, replete with fungi, bacteria, and maggots, even should they fall, shall spew new life from their sundered bodies. The teachings of Nurgle, antithetical to the followers of Tzeentch. The Lord of Change despises their blind acceptance of death, derived from a sense of despair, rather than hope to change their fortunes. Diametrically opposed in disposition, regardless of the changer of way scheming, its followers often cannot match the resigned determination of Nurgle's followers. Their willingness to perish for the sake of their kin's continued efforts to serve their master's will. Though not devoted to acts of slaughter, such as the Blood Legions of Khorne, the mass suffering inflicted by the Plague Legions can be far more widespread in its implementation of suffering. Cheerfully bounding to and fro as they conduct their duties to the Grandfather, the demons of Nurgle are jovial in their efforts to spread disease, with the gleeful mischief of carefree children. The most diminutive of such demons, known simply as Nurglings, swarms of such creatures defend the host to which they are birthed, and even the mightiest greater demons are said to have been spawned from such humble stock before growing in stature. Plague Bearers are larger humanoid lesser demons which act as the common mobs of the Plague Legions. These glum foot soldiers, always surrounded with flies, as the victims of the disease known as Nurgle's Rot. The single most potent concoction ever created by the Plague Father, no toil of the last 10 millennia has come close to matching the Rot's capacity for suffering. The untold billions of Plague Bearers who have been spawned from its influence, a testament to its effectiveness. No army of the Grandfather is complete without swarms of rotflies, large insects pupated from the souls of resentful beasts, sundered from the realm of the living, as explained within tomes of the Eldar's Black Library. Ridden by the highest ranking of all Plague Bearers, known as Plague Drones, these demons given authority to ride rotflies tally the spread of disease from on high, before swiftly diving into battle to sunder heavily defended positions. Plague Toads, also known as Sewerkin or Rot Eaters, are large enough to consume a living man whole. Their attraction to places of decay, aided by sorcerers capable of summoning such vermin who bind them to their will. Beasts of Nurgle, also known as Slime Hounds or Nurgle's Lapdogs, are slug-like avatars of the Plague Father who are paralyzing to the touch. Their mere presence, killing small animals and plant life, unable to live within the stench of their miasmas. Heralds of Nurgle are the most honored ranks of the lesser demons, each foot soldier commanding their lessers armed with a variety of weapons. Those carrying bale swords are known as Poxbringers, their toughened skin earned through endurance of Nurgle's rot over an extended time span, as their broader forms belie their vitality. Those afflicted by the chortling moraine infection are known as Sloppity Bilepipers, the music spewing from their gut pipes and marotta instruments, though failing to amuse their plague-bearer peers, greatly delights Nurglings and great unclean ones. Spoilpox Scriveners, tasked with inscribing tallies of the Grandfather's maladies inflicted upon its foes. Their endless hidebound scrolls are said to be penned with quills made from the feathers plucked from Lords of Change. Vile Savants are the designation given to thralls of mortal origin. These putrescent survivors of myriad diseases often wear sealed containment suits, ruptured in several places, as signs of their afflictions show boneless limbs slick with putrefaction. The most senior of Nurgle's demons, known as Great Unclean Ones, these bloated abominations dote on their charges and are enraged should even the lowliest of Nurglings perish. Resilience, their most crucial attribute, even riddled with untold bolter shells, These Goliaths shrug off most forms of weapons fire as their maggot-filled innards sway to and fro from their bellies. The field generals of the Grandfather's Plague Legions, monstrous exemplars such as Botulaz, Kugath, Rotagus, and Ulker, have heralded untold blights across the stars in the name of their fell patron. The demon princes of Nurgle, transformed from mortal flesh, these champions of the Lord of Flies often lead bands of Plague Marines into battle, as their fetid kinsmen lay low prospective fertilizer for the Plaguefather's garden. The Infecticus legions, appointed as the vectors for new, largely untested diseases, the Pathogenous legions in contrast, as the most contagious army, lead the vanguard when not guarding the most important lairs of the Garden of Nurgle. The Epidemic legions consists of the largest contingent of demons within their ranks as they spread the Plaguefather's influence, whilst the Rot legions fight to spread the domains of the Garden's expanse. The Morbidus legions dispense death to continue the toll of Nurgle, while the Necroticus legions harness the collective hopelessness and despair of their enemies to bring new disciples into the fold. Every Plague Legion, commanded by a Great Unclean One, divided into 7 Talibans, each tasked with a specific objective. Their warfare specializations are at the discretion of their disgusting masters. Reappointed to new Plague Legions when each grows bored of their tasks, the greater demons of Nurgle change with their appointment as their flesh scabs over and sheds to bloom new diseases when reassigned to a new Plague Legion. Each Taliband led by either a demon prince or herald of Nurgle. Whatever their origin, each shall be given a pompous title to mark their leadership, such as Lord of Fulsome Filth, Master of Bubbling Buboes, or Almighty Bringer of Rancid Decay. Each Taliband varying in size as Nurgle's influence burgeons and recedes. Much like the diseases inflicted by their master, the relentless armies of the Grandfather always return, no matter the cures created, to repel their contagions. The lands of the Plague Lord are the domains to which the Grandfather lurks. Its twisted flora and fauna, a perverse garden, beyond fathoming to mortal minds. Peculiar shovel petals unearth themselves from their foundations once bloomed, so that plague bearers can plant new skull seeds within the rich earth of their birth. Bloatflies and beasts of Nurgle, spreading their filth to act as fertilizer for new life. Layers of dead plant life, dead bodies, and unknown entities layering atop one another as they decompose into nutrients which shall enrich the garden's soil. Those mortals transformed into plague bearers toil forevermore, content to see its endless blooms. The most orderly of Chaos gods, as strange as such a statement may seem, Nurgle closely monitors its creations as its experiments are let loose across its domains, whether trees made entirely of Eldar flesh or allotments of human tongues, each infected with disgusting infections. Ever shifting in its boundaries as it bends to the whims of its master, it is not uncommon for specific locations made for unique experiments to disappear once the indulgences of the Grandfather have been sated. Known as the realm of 1,000,001 plagues, these temporary lands offer the shallowest glimpse of the Garden of Nurgle to mortal minds. The faint tone of bells, chiming from the Death Bell lily fields, sound in the tormented minds of madmen, showing glimpses of this realm of impermanence. The hanging gardens of Fushbolg, gifted to the Great Unclean One to acknowledge its infection of a choking plague upon the orcs of Hurax. It is said the greater demon's own intestines hang from the trees, noosed around the slowly rotting bodies of greenskins. The Lord of Flies, delighting in its strolls through its gardens' twisted paths. Most precious of such locations are the deathbeds which Nurgle visits to hear the stories relayed from the realm of the living. The Poxyards, the next stop of Nurgle's strolls. Herein, the Grandfather tests its many contagions as its constitution shifts, allowing clear and clean lakes to turn to pus and effluent within moments to those who attempt to drink from them. Sometimes covered in claw-first brambles, should the Plaguefather wish it, the next moment it shall become barren, its sole purpose to facilitate the flourishing of its concoctions, requiring its residents to be adaptable to its changes. Other locations, such as the Dunglash Arboretum, refines excrement from the putrid trees of the garden, whilst the Morabicium allows toxic herbs to flourish. Every resource and ingredient made to promote growth across every region of the Plaguelands. Crops of spines jut from the earth of the Field of Tooth and Bones, whilst miasmas bubble below the depths of the Eternal Swamps. Fiefdoms such as the Lair of the 13th Lord, Maggot Lord, and Titan Graveyard all in sight of the grandfather's mansion, centered within the heart of the garden. Ancient and decrepit, this monstrous looming structure stands tall despite its rotten timbers and broken walls, the foundations of its construction perversely supporting its weight despite their hollowness. Overgrown with poison ivy, dense moss and crawling vines, the cracked paint, rusted ironworks and broken windows of this decrepit manse billows clouds of flies from its hundreds of chimneys as a fitting home for the avatar of entropy. The chuckling and murmurs of the Plague Father booming from within its depths. None have ever glimpsed past the walls of the home of the grandfather and lived sane enough to relay their findings. The ramblings of madmen stating the grandfather to often sit upon a gargantuan chair to the side of the door of his mansion on occasion. Each visitor who enters its home explores the countless rooms within its maze-like interior. The attic of the manse said to contain catalogues of Nurgle's experiments and jars containing samples of unknown creatures. Its kitchen and larder withhold a variety of ingredients, neatly labelled and ready to be added to the Great Cauldron. Said to hold captive the ancient Eldari god, Isha, within its mansion, the grandfather waged war against She-Who-Firsts in order to capture the goddess for its sick designs. Some believe such an act to be nothing more than an example to set the youngest of the Pantheon in line shortly following its conception. Others cite the being as an object of the god of entropy's obsession due to its nature as an avatar of fertility and rejuvenation. Keeping the goddess contained within a rusted cage set in the corner of its cauldron chamber. As witness to the grandfather's fell creations, some believe Isha to be an ever-living test subject to which Nurgle inflicts its concoctions to test their viability. The Eldar goddess, capable of healing from all symptoms inflicted by the Lord of Flies. Each brew, which shows minimal effect, is consumed by the Lord of Plague, only to be vomited back into the cauldron for tests anew. Isha's whispers bringing portents of such contagions slipping into the realms of mortals. The stoic goddess forewarns the Plague Father's schemes to better allow the living a chance at developing countermeasures. Visitors to the Garden of Nurgle allowed passage only with the sanction of the grandfather. With a single gesture, Nurgle parts the twisting pathways of its domains to those it deems expected company. The Seers of Lugganath brought low in their efforts to free the caged maiden from her imprisonment. Upon the threshold of Nurgle's manse, a host of plague bearers set upon their number for days of combat until the trespassers succumbed to overwhelming plague. Their souls trapped within their spirit stones, preventing them from slipping into the tides of the Immaterium. Their bodies transformed into gnarled trees as their flesh turned to bark, and fingers split into branches to bear future fruits of Nurgle's garden. Their twisted corpses remaining a stone throw from the manse of Nurgle. The wailing screams of the trapped Eldar still torment Isha to this day, as the grandfather smiles at their sound during his delightful strolls. Vorx casts his jaded eyes across the vista and feels his soul rejoice. The Plague Planet is the lodestone of his people, the crucible in which their blessed gifts are developed. They inherited a dust-dry morgue and turned it into a vista of magnificence. This is a vindication of their esoteric creed, of the belief that through entropy comes apotheosis, of the wholehearted embrace of mortality in all its truest and most honest aspects. The lander is shaking down, buffeted by moisture-heavy winds. The far horizon is lit by sooty pyres, and Vorx sees a mighty demon ship rise up slowly from a cradle of rusting spines. Even within the controlled atmosphere of the lander, he can taste the many and wonderful pheromones that only exist here. He hears the boom and roll of drums, the braying of indentured herds, the background drone of a quadrillion flies, all directed towards one glorious end: evangelism. This place is the Mother Church, the incubator for every biocreed and flesh catechism, the pregnant source, the fertile seed. It is all for dissemination elsewhere. The Legion will only rest when all planets are plague planets, and the bells toll out across a galaxy made into this image of spectacular decay. They are the willing disciples, cast adrift in a cold and insipid universe. For a long time, they have been working alone, driven onwards only by internal commitment and orders so old they could have been ossified before the age of the doomed Warmaster. There was no word from the Primarch himself, who was said to spend his days in his mouldering scriptorium. The Legion held together during that time, although it has frayed at the edges, some tempted to cleave their own path, others drawn by the siren call of the Despoiler. That was always a regret to Vaux, who has not heard the voice of his Primarch for many centuries. But there is change in the air now. The plagues taste a little different. The chime of the bells has a strange timbre. Even the bestial sense it, and they lift their elongated faces to the seamy heights. This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Gradual decline and hopelessness are fertile soil for Nurgle to cultivate. For while it concludes that life is destined to perish, it offers solace in birthing life from that which it sunders. The lack of order which entropy provides is a tantalizing prospect for unconstrained experimentation, offering great spoils to keen minds. Yet without boundaries, exploration descends into aimlessness. Investigation, research, and examination of the world around us is crucial for our own understanding. Yet be aware that inaction with such insights gleaned yields the same results as those uncaring to observe. So do not fall for the trap of passivity, for life, even though limited, burgeons with opportunities. For each day brings chances aplenty to improve your circumstance. And that prospect alone is a far better alternative than to give in to nihilism.